The grand courtyard of Ashford Manor glowed beneath thousands of golden lights as guests gathered to celebrate the retirement of renowned architect Edward Harrington, whose decades of success had earned him admiration across the city. Elegant music drifted through the evening air while influential business leaders, former colleagues, and distant relatives exchanged cheerful conversations, making the occasion appear flawless from every angle. At the far edge of the garden, Nathan Brooks sat quietly at a small table beside a fountain, carefully avoiding attention while watching everyone congratulate his father with smiles that seemed effortless. Although he was Edward's eldest son, he had been seated away from the family because his parents believed his career as a neighborhood librarian was an embarrassment compared with the achievements of his younger siblings. Nathan's younger sister had become a celebrated surgeon, and his younger brother owned a successful technology company that regularly appeared in financial magazines, giving their parents endless reasons to boast throughout the evening. Whenever someone asked about Nathan, Edward forced a polite smile and replied, "He chose a simple life," while his wife added, "We always hoped he would aim much higher than borrowing books." Those careless remarks spread from one conversation to another until several guests quietly assumed Nathan had wasted every opportunity life had offered him, even though none of them knew the truth behind his calm expression. Instead of defending himself, he simply sipped a glass of water and reminded himself that genuine purpose could never be measured by applause or expensive possessions. As the celebration reached its busiest moment, an elderly woman with silver hair and a weathered leather notebook entered through the garden gate without attracting much attention. Yet her confident posture hinted that she carried a story far more valuable than any speech planned for the evening. She looked around until her eyes settled on Nathan, smiled warmly, and slowly walked toward his lonely table before asking softly, "May I spend a little time with you?" Nathan welcomed the stranger with a respectful smile, and they spoke quietly while the laughter from the crowded tables echoed across the garden, making their peaceful conversation feel completely separate from the celebration around them. The woman asked simple questions about his work, and his humble answers revealed how deeply he cared for children, elderly readers, and families who depended on the public library more than anyone realized. A little later, the host invited guests to share memories honoring Edward's remarkable career, and several speakers praised his professional achievements with polished speeches that earned generous applause from the audience. Just as the program seemed ready to end, the elderly woman calmly stood, walked toward the stage, and politely requested a few minutes to tell a story of her own. She introduced herself as Margaret Ellison, founder of a respected literacy foundation that had transformed hundreds of struggling schools throughout the country, causing many educators in the audience to recognize her immediately. A wave of surprise swept across the gathering as whispers spread from table to table, and Edward's confident smile slowly faded into uncertainty. Margaret looked around the silent crowd before saying, "The person I came here to recognize is not the celebrated architect standing beside me, but the quiet librarian sitting near the fountain." Every guest turned toward Nathan in confusion as she continued. "For 4 years, I have watched him open his library every Saturday without pay so children from poor neighborhoods could discover hope through books." Nathan lowered his head, embarrassed by the unexpected attention, while the guests listened more carefully than they had all evening, sensing that the most meaningful moment of the celebration had only just begun. Margaret gently opened her old notebook and said, "What I am about to share proves that true greatness often grows in places where very few people think to look." Margaret opened her notebook and read several letters written by parents whose children had once struggled with fear, loneliness, and hopelessness before Nathan patiently guided them toward confidence through reading sessions, mentoring, and endless encouragement. She explained that many of those students had become teachers, nurses, engineers, and artists, yet every one of them still remembered the librarian who had believed in them when almost nobody else did. She then smiled gently and said, "Last year, my own grandson stopped speaking after a heartbreaking illness took his mother, and every specialist told us recovery would take years. But one compassionate librarian slowly brought his smile back through stories and kindness." With tears forming in her eyes, she looked directly at Nathan and added, "That person never accepted a single payment because he said hope should never have a price." The joyful celebration suddenly became completely silent, as guests realized the quiet man sitting alone had quietly changed countless lives without seeking recognition, praise, or personal reward. People who had ignored him earlier now watched with admiration, while Edward and his wife struggled to hide the shock spreading across their faces. Margaret closed her notebook before saying, "Many people spend their lives building impressive buildings that one day may disappear, but building confidence inside a child can last for generations and can never be measured with money." Her heartfelt words echoed across the garden, leaving even the loudest guests unable to think of anything to say as they reflected on what true success really meant. A powerful round of applause slowly filled the evening air before growing into a standing ovation that lasted far longer than anyone expected, and several guests crossed the garden just to shake Nathan's hand with genuine respect. For the first time in many years, he felt completely at peace because the value of his work had finally been seen without him having to defend himself. Edward remained standing beside the stage, unable to find the confident words that had come so easily earlier in the evening, while his wife quietly stared at the floor as memories of every unfair comparison replayed in her mind. Their younger children also looked uncomfortable because they had never questioned the family habit of measuring worth through wealth, titles, and public recognition. One by one, former guests who had laughed at Nathan's expense approached him with sincere apologies, admitting they had accepted a false impression without ever learning who he truly was. Nathan greeted every person with kindness instead of resentment, proving that compassion had shaped his character far more deeply than years of criticism ever could. Before leaving the stage, Margaret announced that her foundation had selected Nathan to lead a nationwide literacy initiative that would establish community reading centers in underserved towns where children had little access to books. The audience erupted once again as reporters attending the event quickly realized that the evening's most remarkable story had nothing to do with the retirement celebration they had originally come to cover. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and guests slowly departed, Edward quietly walked toward his eldest son with hesitation written across his face. Yet the usual pride that had always filled his voice was completely gone. After a long silence, he admitted, "I spent years judging your life by the wrong standards, and tonight I finally understand how much I failed to see." Nathan smiled gently instead of celebrating the moment because he had never dreamed of proving anyone wrong. He had only wanted to live a life that brought hope to others. In that quiet conversation, both father and son realized that respect earned through kindness would always outlast admiration gained through status or fortune. As the first light of morning spread across the city, Nathan returned to his familiar library where children were already waiting outside with books tucked beneath their arms, excited for another day of learning and discovery. Watching their smiling faces reminded him that the greatest rewards in life were never trophies or headlines, but the lasting difference made in another person's future. Weeks later, newspapers praised the new literacy program, yet Nathan refused to let the attention change the quiet way he had always lived and served his community. He believed every child deserved encouragement, regardless of background, and that simple acts of kindness could create opportunities that money alone could never provide. Edward and his wife gradually rebuilt their relationship with their eldest son, not through expensive gifts or dramatic promises, but through honest conversations and genuine respect that had been missing for years. They finally understood that comparing children only creates painful distance, while believing in them can strengthen a family in ways success and wealth never will. Nathan's journey became a reminder that people should never judge someone's value by their income, profession, or social status, because the most extraordinary individuals often work quietly where few people are watching. Real success is measured by compassion, integrity, and the positive influence left in the lives of others, proving that a humble heart can achieve what fame and fortune never can. Thank you for spending your time with this story and remembering that kindness always leaves a legacy far greater than pride or material success. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.